Hey guys, just finished filming an amazing episode of Better Together with Brian Mahan. He is a somatic experiencing practitioner. Now, I don't know if you know anything about somatic work. I didn't know anything about it until Gabrielle Bernstein suggested I work with Brian during that tough time with my mom, and it was absolutely mind-blowing. The changes, the results, the healing that's taken place has been really life-changing for me. So I wanted to share him with you guys, of course, on Better Together. So tune in. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, and just learn about this new modality. I'm sure it's new to a lot of you. It was new to me. And I think you'll really be intrigued and you'll learn a lot about trauma and how it's not just psychological, it's physical. There's so much in this episode for you to learn. I hope you guys will love it. Hey guys, welcome back to Better Together. And this is part 2 of our interview with Brian Mahan, the somatic experiencing expert. Guys, in this episode, I think it all kind of starts to click together. I know it's a lot of new information for most of you, but this is kind of that new modality that I really am excited to introduce you to. I've had so much success with it, and I know that if you try it, you will too. So let's take a listen to part 2. So the other thing you talked about earlier is new patterns, right? So this is a new pattern for me. And I remember, at the end of one of our calls, you're like, okay, so just keep thinking what's new, what's different, think about your new patterns. And I remember I was going to meet my surrogate for breakfast, and I had given her the wrong address, and I was at the wrong location, and normally I would have this like full blown, like, oh my God, what a moron I am. And I would have this like very stressful moment, and I drive like a crazy person, and I would call Kevin and like dump on him about how dumb I was to do this. And I had it in my head. I'm like, new pattern. You're fine. You're just going to breakfast. And if she doesn't understand that you made a human error, then that's on her. And really, this probably isn't going to be a good situation anyway. And I didn't call Kevin. I drove there calmly. She totally understood, of course, but everything always was so consequenced in my mind. Like something bad was going to happen if I made a mistake.
Right.
And so these new patterns that I've been developing have been really helpful. And I'm realizing, like I said, right now that I've created a new pattern with my dad. Cause I remember watching, I was like, am I just becoming my mom now? Since she can't do it, now I'm going to like pop into her role. No, there's just no way. This is so unhealthy. And so, wow, I'm really grateful. Yay, you fixed another thing.
So then speaking about repatterning or new patterns takes us back to this idea of when we have these thought, feeling, behavior, belief clusters, and we can gain the optimal distance to look at it. We can lean into it to explore what's familiar about this, and can we track back to the old wound. So that's neuroplasticity, rewiring the brain around an old wound, right? So that's a great part of what I do and the way in which I work, right? We're actually rewiring the brain, detangling these short circuits, right? But now we have another opportunity too, and that is to create a new neural pathway. Right? So from that place of observation, in that experience of leaning in and feeling the discomfort of it, we can also have the experience of, this is really uncomfortable. I really don't like this. I can see now how this has informed and formed so much of who I am and so much of what my experience on planet Earth has been like to this date, that I can now say, wait a second, I'm in a different place. I have new skills and tools and resources. I'm doing the work, etc. So let me just take a moment and start to work on etching into the ground this new neural pathway. So it starts with a line in the sand, and eventually it becomes a Grand Canyon of a neural pathway, right? And so these neural pathways can be created. They are repetition contingent, right? So one study has shown that it can take up to 400 repetitions to create a new neural pathway. Unless done in play, we can reduce it down to about 40 or as few as 40, right? And so if we're in that place of discomfort, I don't like this, I don't want this to continue. So let me see what would happen if I could imagine this cluster, somebody just reaching in, grabbing it and throwing it away. And now I'm free of the cluster. What do I imagine my future could be like? How would I show up in the world? How would I experience the world? How would people experience me? What would I do with my body? What kind of exercise would I do? How would it affect my relationships? How would it affect my work? Right? So we're moving into the imaginal realm, which is dopamine rich, right? And dopamine is the jet fuel for neuroplasticity.
Mm.
So when we're in the imaginal realm, in the realm of play, right?
Which is more of your middle brain, right?
Exactly. So
it's like almost like we're skipping the middle brain a lot. I feel like we go from high to low, high to low, high to low, and that poor middle brain gets neglected, I feel like.
Exactly, because in trauma, there's a lot of disorganization in the communication between higher, middle, and lower. Right? And so we want to constantly work on keeping all three parts of the brain involved. So even if I'm working with somebody in the imaginal realm, I'm constantly bringing them into their sentient experience of what are you feeling in your body? Do you notice any smells or any sounds? So I'm wanting to create as much reality in the imaginal realm because the lower brain doesn't know the difference between perception and reality. If we can be traumatized by perception, like horror, witnessing something that happens to someone else, right? We're being traumatized in the imaginal realm because we're imagining that it could happen to us, or we're imagining that it is happening to us. Well, if that's possible to be traumatized in the imaginal realm, then clearly we can use the imaginal realm as a way to heal.
Yep.
Right? And so when I'm in that imaginal realm of hope and possibility and opportunity and excitement and anticipation of how different my world would be without this cluster, right? I'm drawing a line in the sand. And every time I do that, that line's getting deeper and deeper. And then we can do one more thing to help habituate the neuroplasticity of creating this new neural pathway. And that is to behave. Right? So if I'm in the imaginal realm of what my future could be like, and I use the example of, I have this image of crossing the finish line of a marathon, right? That if this cluster weren't here, I could run a marathon. I could cross the finish line of a marathon, right? Well, if I went and ran a marathon tomorrow, I would be hospitalized. Okay. I would end up in the ER. So I know that there are many steps that it takes, literally and figuratively, to get to the finish line. So what's a teeny tiny little step I can take right now that can move me in the direction of crossing that finish line? And it might be something as simple as putting my shoes by the front door. It's not putting them on. It's not going for a walk. It's not, jumping into my shoes on the first day and seeing how far can I run. It's, I took an action in that direction. Having completed that action, we want to celebrate ourselves for having completed that action. Celebration is also dopamine rich, right? And so we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts that come through our head a day. So we have 60 to 80,000 opportunities to create new neural pathways and to heal old wounds. If we can seize 3 of them or 10 of them or 15 of them, all the better. Right? And so if I put the shoes by the front door, I do a happy dance. Yeah, I put the shoes by the front door, right? Then in that state, I can also say, well, I got another 5 minutes. What's something I can do that can move me towards crossing the finish line of the marathon? Well, I need to get my diet in order. So I'm going to walk into the kitchen. I'm going to throw away that one thing that is most unhealthy. And so I scour the cabinets in the fridge and I grab that pint of Ben & Jerry's. And I spike it into the trash can. I do another happy dance. Whoa, I'm taking it, And so we can just constantly build that. I had a client of mine who started doing that as she was doing chores and things around the house. Her husband started noticing, started thinking, what's going on, honey? You're acting a bit weird. And so she told him what she was doing. And he started giving her high fives and slapping her on the butt and, things like that. And then eventually he started doing it with her. Right. And then they transform their relationship and their connectivity and their attunement to one another through the celebration of their tiny little micro accomplishments throughout the day. So it even had an impact on their relationship.
Well, also, if you celebrate, you're going to remember. So if you're trying to build a new pattern, like for me, I remember that new pattern that I built about not having this crazy freak out attack that I was late now because I celebrated it so many times. I've talked about it so many times. It's like, I'm so proud of myself that I know it sounds silly, but I was so proud of myself. And I kept telling Kevin, wow, I can't believe I did that. That was so cool, because it's a conscious choice to act differently. So as you're building that pattern, when you're meeting it with the dopamine, then you're starting to like lay the building blocks for that new neural pathway.
Yeah. And emotion intensifies all things, right? So if we have a thought and then we have a negative emotion, it intensifies the thought. Then we start thinking more things in that vein, right? Just as if we have a thought and it brings up, pride, then it's going to intensify that thought of pride. And we can start seeing the correlations of, oh, and I did it here, and I did it here, and I did it here, and I did it here. I'm really changing and growing. Things are getting better, right? And so emotion, is behavior in and of itself, right? Because that's part of the emotional expression is sensation and behavior and neurochemicals and behavior. Mm-hmm. Right. And so we want to make sure that we have all of that in there. And so behavior, can be something as simple as a raising of an eyebrow, or dry heaving.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's all part of the emotional expression.
I want to ask you to share with everyone how to orient themselves and why it's important. And so why is it important, and how do they do it specifically every day? Because this is a really good technique.
Yeah. So this is one of those things that we call a resource, right? And so resources are both internal and external. So we can have internal resources like fond memories, or we can have internal resources such as pleasant sensations. I feel relaxed, I feel calm, I feel at peace, I feel energized, I feel joyful, right? That's an internal resource. We also have external resources, which can be people, places, and things, colors, shapes, textures, objects, etc., right? Or being at the beach, or being in the mountains, or being at the desert, depending on what, kind of naturescape is most resourcing to you. But so we talked about a little bit before the idea of orienting through all five senses. So several years ago, I created, branded a little open-eyed moving meditation that I call the fives. And I'll be happy to link audio files for your listeners. And the fives is basically, the idea is to take 5 Post-it notes, write the number 5 on each one, and hang one in 5 locations that you frequent on a daily basis: kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, laptop, car, what have you. And that's just a mnemonic device. It's just a little reminder that once a day, at least once a day, when you see the Post-it note, to take 5 minutes to orient through all 5 senses. Right? So if you're doing it 5 times a day in 5 locations for 5 minutes, you're spending 25 minutes a day consciously connecting to your environment, right? Because a lot of times in traumatization, what happens is we become desensitized, we become dissociative, we shut down, we distract, we disconnect, right? We get tunnel vision in a way. And so this is a way to kind of expand your awareness and connectivity with the outside world and with yourself. But it's also ultimately feeding the lower brain the information it needs to know where you are in time and space, and therefore create the experience of being present and in the moment. And we've been bantering around those terms for decades, but this is how you actually do it, right? There isn't any other way to become present and in the moment than to be fully oriented through all 5 senses, externally and internally. The more fully oriented you are internally and externally, the more present you are, right? So 5 Post-it notes, 5 locations, 5 times a day. And what I recommend is you start, so you do 1 minute for each, right? And I always say, we're going to practice this in the external environment first, because oftentimes in traumatization, our bodies can become a shop of horrors. And so going there first may not be the best place to go. So we're going to put the attention outside of us, right? And we're going to look, right? So we look, we listen, we smell, we taste, we feel. So that's how I teach it. Look, listen, smell, taste, feel, right? And I don't mean feel on the inside, I mean feel, like touch things, notice their temperature, their texture, the spatial relationship, the resistance that you get when you push against a wall, those kinds of things, right? So 1 minute looking around, color, shapes, textures, images, objects, things that give you a sense of well-being, safety, pleasant memory, right? Then listening to the sounds, everything that you can hear outside of your house or apartment, everything you can hear inside your house or apartment, but to really give it your undivided attention, even if it feels like, or seems like you're not hearing anything, you're actively engaged in listening. So you're actively engaging the lower brain function of vigilance. Am I safe? Am I not safe? The absence of sound is actually giving information that there's no animal growling, right? There are no footsteps coming down the hallway, right? So the absence of sound or the absence of things that you see or absence of smell can actually be very resourcing for the system as well. And then we move our attention into smelling. Smelling isn't just breathing in, right? There's an olfactory nerve. And as you watch animals, they don't just breathe in, they sniff. And so we need to actively engage in that sniffing so that we're driving the air to the olfactory nerve and engaging the musculature in a different way that's saying, I am searching for scent, right? And so, our sense of smell is our most accurate, long-lasting, and we can recognize 10,000 different scents. And with each one, we can have multiple memories attached, right? And so, sometimes we can be in an environment where we're not really picking up anything as far as smell, because it may be we're used to the smell of our house, right? Mm-hmm. But what we can do is then engage the imaginal realm and remember the scent of the ocean, or the scent of horses, or the scent of fresh cut grass, or the scent of, your mom's favorite perfume, if you and your mom had a great relationship, those kinds of things to kind of engage, right?
Then we've got sniff yourself, right?
Yeah, you can sniff your hair, your clothing. You can pick things up and smell them,
Okay.
And then taste, we have taste buds all over our tongue, the tip, the back, the sides. And so really bringing attention awareness into all of that, sweet, salty, sour, bitter, chemical, metallic, and some say umami. And then, touch, and that is, reach out and touch and feel, like I said before, texture, temperature, spatial relationship. Or you can also feel the weight of your clothing on your skin. You can feel the difference in temperature where your skin is exposed and where it's covered. You can feel the pressure of your shoes around your feet. You can feel the weight of your earrings on your ears, right? So just bringing that kind of attention to the outside of you and the way in which you have a sentient engagement and experience with the outside world. So after doing that for several days and building that skill set, then you can turn your attention to orienting towards the internal environment, which engages the imaginal realm as well, because you can't see inside, but you can imagine inside. You can imagine your bones and muscles and lymph and organs and vascular system, et cetera, so that you kind of get into the wonder of, oh my God, this incredible machinery and biology is sustaining life and movement, et cetera. So we can get into the wonderment of how we have all these systems that work so seamlessly together. And then again, smell, we can go back into just the internal experiences of, reconnecting to smells. We can listen to the internal sounds of swallowing and clearing your throat and bones creaking and your breath coming in and your breath going out, and, feel the cool air coming in as the lungs expand and the diaphragm drops, and the diaphragm rises and the lungs contract and the ribs contract, and then the warm air goes out, so you can just bring your attention awareness to the internal environment that way. But, like I said, I'll send you guys the MP3 links. And so that way everybody can download them, throw them on their iPhone or their Android and have them anywhere. And so you can listen to me walking you through the process until you get the hang of it and do it on your own. You can do it standing in line at the bank. You can do it while having lunch with a friend. You can do it anywhere, anytime, right? It's an open-eyed, moving meditation that can help you bring a greater sense of being present in the moment.
I love it. I love it, Brian. Kev, Kelsey, I'll let you guys jump in with any last thoughts, if you have any.
I'm digesting this all. Like, oh my gosh. I still can't get over, Brian. I'm like, I wrote it back at the very beginning, that your memory can change up to 50%. I mean, what the heck?
Kelsey.
Well, and we can change it.
Right.
We can consciously change it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How many times, well, not many, how many times, but I'm sure everybody's had the experience of having told a mistruth so many times they've come to believe it.
I thought that's what a sociopath does.
Well,
no, but I've said that many times. That's why I always say, and at least in our business, Brian, if a mistruth is told about you, to step on it fast, because it becomes a truth over time. But how many times do we remember a line from a movie? This is like, there's so many famous lines that, we remember in movies that actually weren't the line.
Right.
The person never said it that way. And famous lines too, that are on t-shirts. No, that's actually, Jew Day was something that, I don't know, was Tony Curtis always said, and he never said that.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah. So there's an example of it. I think the thing for me is I understand how all of this happens. I think it's the unwinding, Brian, of it and the healing that is confusing to me, but maybe it's because it's such a long process. So maybe this is like halfway there, is understanding that this is how we've gotten in these states. But I think for me, I'm a little confused about how to unwind this spool, how to decluster those thoughts.
Right. And like I said, so working on the original wounds is best done with a trained professional, because you don't want to re-traumatize yourself. Right.
Ooh.
Telling our story.
Great note.
Can re-traumatize.
Yeah.
Our lower brain doesn't know the difference between perception and reality. So even though we may be crying on our friend's shoulder and telling them our story, or we're laying on the analyst's couch or sitting across the room from a psychologist, or crying about it alone in the back corner of our closet, or just revisiting it in the memory loop within our own minds, we run the risk of re-traumatizing. And so when I work with narrative, I take it out of order and I do little bits and pieces at a time. And so there's a lot of technique in how to facilitate someone's nervous system to come back online, to manage that so that they don't go into overwhelm or collapse into underwhelm, and then to be able to work with the charge that's there in a safe and healthy way so that the system can actually unwind and discharge and reorganize.
So, Brian, are you saying that we need to find a somatic therapist in our areas? Basically, like, not even a general therapist may not even be good to retell the trauma to.
Yeah, I mean, I may be a bit myopic on the topic, but I believe that trauma is, at least intrinsically and initially, a physiological experience. And that's where things get disorganized, is physiologically, the communication between lower, higher, and middle brains, the governance of the lower brain over the autonomic nervous system, the expression of the nervous system, right? Because, the lower brain and nervous system express through sensation, right? And sensation is language. And the most important part of any communication is listening. And so we need to learn how to listen to sensation. We need to learn how to feel, because we've been conditioned, socialized, taught, and trained throughout our lives that it's not okay to feel what we're feeling. Big boys don't cry. Keep a stiff upper lip. Chin high, shoulders back, soldier on, right? We're getting all this messaging that it's not okay for us to feel. And so we learn to disconnect, dissociate, and self-regulate. I feel something I don't want to feel, so I hit the punching bag. I feel something I don't want to feel, I eat some chocolate cake. I feel something I don't want to feel, I slam some heroin. I feel something I don't want to feel, I go for a run. I feel something I don't want to feel, I call a friend. I feel something I don't want to feel, right? We're in this constant state of trying to get out of feeling what we're feeling. And it's not that that's a bad thing. It's a respite, right? It gives us a bit of a break, but it's not healing. And when we distract, disconnect, and dissociate, we're abandoning the wound to fester. And so it perpetuates, even though it may not be on our radar. So we first and foremost, we have to learn how to feel. We have to learn how to reconnect to our bodies. And there are certainly many things that we can do as individuals in an intrapersonal process, meaning me just working on my own, right? Simple things like taking the time to recognize and acknowledge that we're in a sentient experience, right? I'm feeling frustrated right now. Okay. So you've given this sentient experience the context of frustration. So let's get a little bit more curious about that. How and where do you feel what? Well, this frustration, I feel this tightness in my chest, my heart is elevated, my heart rate is elevated, I can't breathe deeply, I'm trembling and shaking, I'm starting to sweat, right? And so we can take that and slow it down and inquire, of these 5 sensations that I'm feeling right now that I'm equating with frustration, what's the one that's most tolerable? So let's see what would happen if I shift my attention awareness into that sensation, not the full expression of the frustration, but just that one sensation. So maybe that one sensation is the expression of heat, right? So I'm going to bring my attention awareness into just feeling the heat. Where awareness goes, energy flows. And so we're going to listen to the body's expression of this one expression of the heat, and we're going to embrace it and allow it and get curious about it and willing to feel it. Right? Our resistance, are the greater part of feeling anything, an itch or an emotion, right? The greater part of feeling anything is our resistance to feeling it. So if we can collapse the resistance through curiosity, then what we're actually feeling is much more tolerable, right? And then I often say, something that I came to on my own in the midst of my panic attacks and all that kind of stuff was, is this tolerable? And so my definition of intolerable was, I need to go to the emergency room. So if I don't have to go to the emergency room, then this is tolerable. What have I just done? I've created a sense of empowerment. I can rely on my inner strength. This is uncomfortable. I hate it. It's scary. I'm beginning to think it's never going to end. Am I crazy or am I possessed? I can go into all of that, right? But when I can bring my attention awareness into that one sensation that's most tolerable, and I can go, I don't need to go to the emergency room. I can feel this, right? And then eventually I got to a point where I was literally screaming, is this all you got? Bring it on, bring it on. As I'm flopping around like a fish on a hot rock, right? But I collapsed my resistance. I became willing and curious. I wouldn't recommend that to everybody because we can re-traumatize ourselves in those kinds of experiences as well. And that's why, having this one simple tool of what is called titration, a tiny little step, and then we couple that with pendulation. We lean into the edge of the sensation, and then we pendulate out into a resource. We spend more time in the resource. Then in the resource, we're going to notice our system is starting to settle. Mm-hmm. That the presenting symptoms of that frustration are starting to settle. When we notice that settling has happened, we can go back in and feel into the edge of where it is now. Get curious about it, willing to feel it, no need to change it. Then when it feels right, you pull back out and you go back into the resource and you spend more time there. And so that's, a bit tricky because like I said, for some people, their body is a shop of horrors. For some people, they have the experience of not feeling anything. right? Because sometimes over habituation or over extreme situations, our sympathetic nervous system, the expression of anger, fear, sadness, vulnerability, shame, right? That sympathetic charge in the system, if it pierces our bank of toleration, then our parasympathetic system comes in to manage it. And so we can go flat, right? So have a real flat affect, right? Like I had a very flat affect for many, many years because I was so shut down. I used to think of myself as the land of the walking dead. And I was dead behind the eyes, and I had no, cadence and rhythm in my voice. And I certainly didn't talk with my hands. And, I was very, very shut down and very flat because my relationship to anger, fear, sadness, vulnerability, and shame was one in which I needed to contain it and manage it and suppress it. And so even though my presentation was, I'm good. People used to say, you're so aloof, you're so cool, you're so laid back. And now I look back at it and go, no, I was so shut down. I was so offline, but, we don't want to rip the lid off of that freeze, because then we're going to have a great big mess. It's like a pressure cooker. We need to let the steam out. And so again, even in working with shutdown and freeze, it's more complicated and it takes longer. And there's a greater need to have someone with you working through that. Right. Yeah. And then also in the interpersonal realm and working with someone, if their nervous system is more regulated, it's going to hold space for your nervous system being dysregulated, and it's going to teach and train your nervous system through energetic resonance how to be more regulated. And so there's a lot of benefit in working with someone, and there are a lot of inherent risks in trying to do too much on your own.
So don't try this at home, everybody. Find Brian or a Brian, because I will tell you, you have been so instrumental in my kind of succeeding through this really tough journey. I've told you, I definitely don't think I would have gone through it as easily as I did. It was still hard, obviously, but I've really been able to handle it so much better because of my work with you. So thank you for that. And I know that you have a book that you're working on that we're eager to get. That's a TBD on the publishing date yet, but it will be out soon, and we will be tracking that, and you'll keep us posted on that. In the meantime, if you guys want to visit Brian's website and learn more about what he does and his resources for all of you, you can go to briandmahan.com. We'll put that in the link to this. He also wanted us to share traumahealing.org and healingshame.com, which are two other amazing resources. So check those out as well. And of course, you can find him on Instagram at Brian D. Mahan, SEP. So we'll put that in the link as well. Brian, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
All right, guys. So very complex stuff, right? It was probably a lot for everybody, but we'll have Brian on again, and we'll keep. It's like when you're learning something completely new, at first you're like, whoa, there's a lot. Like I said, even in my first session, but if you listen to both episodes, it starts to really come together, I think, in the second episode. Don't you think, Kev?
Yeah. And I also think just the understanding of knowing how much our traumas affect us physically, right? And emotionally, and how it's connected. I think this will get you halfway there.
Yeah.
But then the next half, we all have to work on.
Oh, I just think, guys, somatic experiencing work is just the best thing that I was introduced to. I'm so grateful that Gabby connected me with Brian. It's really changed me in a lot of ways. So I hope you guys like the show. If you haven't hit subscribe on YouTube, please do. Of course, subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a comment. We're seeing the comments upticking, so we're really grateful for them. Thank you. It really helps us. Follow us at Better Together with Maria on Instagram for daily clips and daily positivity. It's kind of your place to feel good every day. And if you haven't joined us on Patreon, We, of course, would love to have you. Our Heal Squad is very connected there. It's amazing. It deepens your experience on Better Together, but also at the $10 tier, not only are you getting bonus episodes and ad-free shows, but you're also getting the monthly Heal events. And we got Brian, right, Kelsey?
I can get Brian. Heck yeah.
Oh, I thought I read that we had Brian set up to do a Heal session.
Yogi, but he would absolutely do it. I know he would.
Yeah, we got to get him to do one.
Definitely.
I think one of the Heal Squad members doing this experience with him or more in this event would be really cool to kind of see how it works. Because if I could get something that had been there for, like I said, that one location, that hard ball that was there for so long to just poof, go away in one session, imagine what he could do for you. So that is if you're a part of Patreon. So join us there. You can click the link tree in my Instagram or the Better Together Instagram to join us there. And in the meantime, follow us at Maria Menounos, at Kelsmeyer. Oh, geez, you changed it. At the Kelsey Meyer, at Better Together with Maria, and at Brian D. Mahan, SEP. And remember, be nice, people, make good choices, and be present.